All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of the Too Many Hobbies podcast. I'm your host, Brian Ellithorpe. Today, I have my buddy Matt Huckaby on. We're going to be talking about his guide service and him traveling around basically the United States at this point, hunting and doing all sorts of fishing, and it's been pretty cool to follow along with. So, Matt, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Excited to be here.
Yeah, so I know that you're not originally from this area. So what's first of all got you started in waterfowl hunting, but what brought you to Lake Erie?
So I grew up in Dayton, Ohio. And if you've ever been to Dayton, it's like the worst place in the world to be an outdoors guy. Okay. It is literally just like concrete buildings everywhere and like nowhere to do anything. So that's where I grew up. Dad hunted a bunch of the reservoirs around there. So when I was like 4 or 5, like my earliest memories were going out there, and like I thought it was so cool when he brought the boat home. I'd go out there and play with the 1 or 2 ducks he shot that day. I thought it was just the coolest thing ever. And then when I got into 3rd grade, Dad bought a lake house up here in the Port Clinton area because he liked walleye fish. So then I started spending the summers up here fishing all the time. I didn't get to hunt up here until I was about 10 or so. And once we only went a handful of times a year because usually the park winterized it by the time hunting season came around. So it was kind of hit and miss with that. And then when I got out of school, like especially like college, I started getting more free time, and it was just like game on. Like I was staying at the lake house, I didn't care, and I was trying to hunt like as much as I could. So then that led to me taking a bunch of online classes so I could just like hunt every morning. And yeah, from there
that's the dream right there.
Yep.
Skipping class and trying to do online class so that you can hunt as much as possible.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
Dude, the best was when they give a syllabus and it was like 2 tasks make up 90% of your grade and then a paper. I'm like, oh, I'll be here twice. Bye.
I know the 3 days I got to show up, and I'm gonna hunt the rest of them.
Yep.
That's awesome. So then when did you start like actually like getting on the big water and like really trying to figure it out?
So we started coming up, like I said, I'd say around 10 or so, we started like putting my feet in the water around here. And
got it.
The nice thing with Dad's place, he actually still has it, right across the dike from his place is a waterfowl refuge.
Oh, okay.
So it was really nice. Dad could launch the boat Friday night, tie it up to his dock, and then we could just go right around the corner and hunt the refuge.
Right.
And I just remember like it was just like so many birds. It was deafening. You could hear them back there from like the trailer. I get so excited to go. And like, so I started doing a little bit around 10 to 12 years old. And then the older I got, it just like, I kept working on my dad. Finally, he left the trailer open, didn't winterize it until after duck season. So every weekend we were going and going and going. I was just like learning and learning. But that was like the only place I ever hunted up here, like until I got my driver's license.
Right.
So once I got my driver's license, I just kind of started going around scouting. But it was so hard because I was only here for a day and a half a week to really figure out where I was going or what I was doing or anything. So I really didn't start learning until I started moving up here and going to college. And then I had so much free time, I could really start scouting. I could hunt new places. So that's kind of how I got into that.
What size boat was he
using?
Funny
side note. So he had a 20-foot Mod V Crestliner John boat.
Oh, okay.
Which was great. It was big, wide boat, stable, and then he could literally go right around the corners and hunt. And I'm talking like we were so close. It was like we'd come out the canal and you wouldn't even put the boat up on plane and you're pulling into the rocks to hunt. Like that's how close he was. So it was like a tank of fuel lasts us all season. It was great.
Yeah, this is fantastic.
Yep. But I'll tell you what, having that refuge across the canal from me was probably the best thing growing up because I learned how to call birds from that refuge. Like I would go out there in the evenings and sit there and listen to them. I remember as a kid, I'd like listen to these hens yelling around at other drakes, and I would call them my call, and the whole refuge goes silent. I just sit there. I'm like, oh no, and they start talking again,
That's screwed up.
I just kept doing it, dude. And about the end of like the second year when I started messing with them, all of a sudden I remember it to this day. I hit my call, like a little greeting call, and a hen answered back instantly. And the whole marsh didn't go quiet. I'm like, I did it. I felt like king. Like I was like, oh my God, I did it. I did the right cadence. Like I did it. I cracked the code. And dude, from there, oh my God, started doing balancing hands, started getting good with those. I just learned from that because back then there were no trees, so you could see right into the refuge from
Got
my
it.
dad's
Okay.
place. So you see all these birds just tornadoing down, and dude, you learn so much by watching them and how they talk. Birds on the water talk to the ones in the air. You learn so much. I learned more from doing that than I have hunting. Like that really, like leaps and bounds got me ahead just
And
watching them.
well, that too is like it gives you a good base. Like if you don't learn the basics when you
Yes.
first start out, you're going to either go backwards before you go forwards, or you're just never going to go forwards.
Yes.
And I think there's a lot of people that could learn from that too. Like you can go to a park and listen to birds talk to each other. They might not
Yes.
do, they might not circle and do all that, depending on the park you go to, obviously.
Sure.
But it's the same concept.
Yes. And you'll watch like what the birds on the water do when different groups of birds are coming in, and you'll watch how alert they get and how they start talking to each other. And like you'll hear them like when mallards like swim around, they're just constantly chattering
Right.
like the whole time. And then you'll see when they see ones coming, all of a sudden heads go up and just start screaming at each other like, no, this is my area, go over there. And I learned so much from them, dude. It was great growing up over there, I can tell you that. So
Yeah, and the refuge is primarily like puddle ducks, stuff like that. Did you see a
yes,
lot of divers in there?
ringnecks I saw a lot of.
Ringnecks, yeah, that
Yep,
makes
I'd see
sense.
ringnecks buzzing around, a few redheads, a lot of geese, and a lot of like mallards and gabwalls. And then I was obsessed with pintails, and you'd see pintails in there, but they would not come out on the lake, and it was like, just come out for the love of God.
They know
So,
something we don't.
yeah, pintails are like, ooh, deep water, not going out there, and they come, and it was like an imaginary line, man. You'd sit there, I get so frustrated because you'd see them coming out towards you. All of a sudden, they hit that dike and just U-turn right back, and it's like,
They just bank it.
how,
Yeah.
like.
You're like, I've learned so much, but this is the one thing I can't get past.
Yep. Yep.
So
They're
then
just
when,
like teasing me. Yep.
oh yeah, of course. So your dad had the boat. When did you end up buying your own boat?
So dad gave me that boat when I started driving because he was kind of getting out of hunting. He was
Got it.
getting
Okay.
older. So he just kind of let me just take over and just start doing my thing. Like I said, I worked through college and hunting like as much as I could. And I got out of school and finally landed my first decent job was at Verizon, and this was like 2016. And I had ran that flat bottom and things I should have never ran a boat in. Okay, let alone a flat bottom. And this thing was just like breaking at the seams because, dude, we would run those out to the islands, lay out shit,
Yep.
and we could just go. And it didn't matter. We were young. I didn't care if the boat broke, and we just went for it, right? And that boat has seen a lot better days. So I remember talking to dad, and he's like, well, like, let's see what we can get on trade in. So we ended up trading it in, and I got, I guess, my first duck boat. It was a long Alaskan 20
Okay.
foot. And I was so cheap at the time, like I couldn't afford a motor. So I pulled the motor off the trade in and then mounted a tiller handle on it. I'm like, well, it'll work. And that's what we did.
What size motor was that?
115 Yamaha. Yep.
Yeah.
Pulled it off, slapped the tiller handle on it. Guys are like, dude, you're not going to be able to control that tiller. I'm like, oh, I'll be fine. And away we went.
Yeah,
That's
sit back and watch this.
Yeah. So I didn't take into account the guy did not tell me when I bought that boat that he should have gave me a wetsuit and a snorkel when he sold it to me, because in December that is like the wettest boat I have ever drove. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean the sides on the Alaskans aren't super high.
Yes. and being it was a teller sitting in that back corner. Oh my
Yeah.
god, it was like
You
somebody
get all
throwing
the
5-gallon
spray.
buckets of water on me. I was like, okay, this is horrible.
That's a boat that's designed for like a side console up 2/3 of the bow, and you're
Yep,
sitting all the way at the back of it just getting drenched.
exactly. Yep.
And you learn real quick when you get a boat that's not designed for what it's supposed to be, what you want out of a boat.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very quickly. I was actually stunned. I ran into some issues because you know how they have those gun boxes that go along the side.
Yep.
It lasted 2 days before I had a 24-inch split on both of them from that boat flexing in the waves out there.
Oh.
Because I put all the decoy slot bags, foamers on the nose, and I had 2 layouts on top, and nothing in the back but people. So when I was
Yeah.
running, it was plowing and just flexing and just chewing it up. Yeah,
That's
that boat had
nuts.
a hard life for 1 year.
So you had that
Yep.
for a year and you didn't do any guiding on that boat?
No, so I got that boat in 2016. So it'd been fall of 2016, and I traded that boat in. Had to be around January of 17. Yeah, January of 18. So back up for a second. So I'll kind of tell you like why I decided to start guiding because I've been asked this a bunch. So
Yeah.
I was at Verizon and it was like I remember this. So I was in sales at Verizon and I was pretty good at sales, right? Well, I had been there for 2 years at the time, and there was this woman that worked there, and she handled all the back end stuff. So making sure the phones were scanned in and stocked, like everything was stocked, supporting the sales guys, right? Well, she had been there for 20 years, and I remember the district manager came in and brought a cake in, which was weird. And he sets the cake down, calls her into the office. She's in there about 10 minutes, and she comes out bawling her eyes out. And he had told her that they're eliminating her position. She has 6 weeks to find a position within Verizon, but she had no merits and had to basically start from scratch again. Not transfer, but come in as a new hire to a new
Right.
position. And that devastated her. That's all she had. So, and then he came out and he literally goes, well, you guys hit your sales numbers. Let's have cake and celebrate. As this woman's just bawling her eyes out that she just lost her job, right? Everything she
Yeah,
worked
it's
for.
super weird.
And dude, that day I remember taking lunch and I remember calling my dad and I'm like, Dad, I've never felt so helpless in my life that somebody could just flip a switch and I'm out of a job. So Meg and I started planning and stuff. I'm like, I don't know what I'm gonna do. And she's like, well, you have all this stuff, you know the lake better than anybody. Why don't you just start guiding? So that's kind of where it came from, right?
Yeah.
So I made plans, get my captain's license that fall. So that was fall of 17, get my license. And I realized with my lawn, I wasn't going to make any money if I could only run 2 people.
Right.
There's like no money. So I was like, I need a bigger boat. So at the time, there was only 2 options. There was duck water, which is aluminum, or banks, which is fiberglass. I'm
Right.
like, well, if I'm hunting rocks or ice, I'm going to break that banks like tomorrow.
Right. Yeah.
So I'm like, well, I can't afford a new duck water, so I gotta find a decent duck water to use. And nobody had like a bigger one. I mean, people had 18-footer, but nobody had big ones.
Right.
So I ended up picking up the phone and calling different outfitters and came across one that was actually getting ready to sell his. So he's like, well, you can pick it up in January after my season's done. So I was like, great. And I didn't even think about it being a saltwater boat. Well, I drive all the way out there to pick it up January. Keep in mind, I'm broke at this point, right? Like I just bought my license. I'm trying to get started.
Yeah.
And take the boat home and figure out that the whole boat needs rewired and the motor has corrosion issues. So I'm like, oh my God. So did all that in the off season and I couldn't afford to pay anybody. So me and my buddies are out there with a case of beer when beer still got people to do things and rewired this boat because I am no electrician. And we got it going. And I formed the business in June of 18 and then started running a couple fishing trips, but it was pretty slow. And then came into towards hunting season. I started running ads in like August and stuff. Dude, I was freaking out because I got to a week out from opener, a second split. I still like sold 0. And I bought insurance. I bought new layouts. I just bought this boat. I had just blown my whole reserve. I'm like, oh my God, what did I do? And then the phone rang, and I remember the guy, his name was Greg from Columbus, and he came out. And of course, he takes opening day, which is fine. And he booked it like 4 days before opener. Okay. Of course, my luck, that lake blew gale out of the west for opener. I'm like, oh my God. But I was so hard up for money. I'm like, oh, I'm not canceling. I got duck water. Like, we're going.
Oh, yeah.
Dude, I came out that cut, and I remember the first wave hitting me, rolling right up over the side and just swamping everybody in the boat. I'm like, wow, that was a big one. So I goosed it and got across to where there's some calmer water and set up, and it was probably one of the, like, we shot a lot of birds, but dude, I worked so hard trying to anchor that boat and 40 to 50 mile an hour winds because those sides are so tall.
Yeah, it just blows like a sail. Yeah.
Yep. But that's how I started. That was it. And then he actually came home, so he hunted 2 days with us. He did a boat blind and a layout hunt, and we did really well. We shot him. Dude, that guy helped me a lot because him and his buddies posted on all like the forums and everything on Facebook and outside of Facebook. Dude, my phone blew up that whole next week. And within 2 weeks, I sold 50 days. I was full for the whole season just from him posting everywhere. Because like I didn't know this, the guy had GoPro on and started posting like GoPro things and like big, like we shot redheads and golden eyes and stuff. And dude, that guy like made it for me the first year. So
that's so crazy.
How we got going.
Because I think I met you in 2019.
Was it? I thought you went 18.
It could have been 18.
19.
It's been a while now.
Yeah.
18 or 19, but either way, I had my GoPro on, and that's probably one of the most like viewed videos on my channel.
Yes. Dude, I still get phone calls from that. They're like, hey, we saw you on YouTube.
Yeah.
And like I saw like, dude, that looks so cool. Like, do we get to hunt over the dog and everything? And instantly I was like, that's Brian's video. Like, he hooked me up.
Well, because I put your card at the end of it too.
Yeah.
Said you're on Facebook, and it had all your info there. And at the time, I didn't expect that video to do like anything at all. And within like a week, it had 3,000 views or something. I'm like, what is going on? It's only a 4-minute video. It's probably like one of the lower, I wouldn't say like lower quality, but like lower effort videos that I've made, because I made that on my phone. And so like before I started like actually using different cameras and stuff, like now the videos are way better, but that one just has what people are looking for that are trying to come up to Lake Erie. It's like, you want to come up to Lake Erie in the middle of November or late November, this is what you get. Like when you go out there, when you're 10 miles into the lake, like it's pretty insane. And I don't think a lot of people really understand the type of lake that Lake Erie is when it comes to divers. But it's not like a huge mallard population. Like nobody comes here like they do for Arkansas. But if you want to shoot bluebills, buffies, golden eyes, redheads, this is a good spot to come.
Yeah. Well, a lot of people, and I tell them when they call, and we get a lot of business from down south, like Southern Ohio, Virginias and stuff. Okay. And when they call, I can instantly tell that they're not from around here, because I'll be like, oh, what? Like, they're like, well, how rough is it going to be? I'm like, oh, it'll be, 2 to 4 footers when we go out there and we'll hunt somewhere calm. And they're like, how big? They like stop instantly. And I'm like, they're like, it's a lake. I'm like, I understand it's a lake, but it's like an ocean. It's like a freshwater ocean.
Right.
Nobody, what are you doing? Nobody like understands that, dude. And I'm like, you don't understand, man. Like, they're like, so you'll cancel a hunt for wind? I'm like,
oh yeah.
Yep. Like, you're not getting off the trailer some days. Like,
yeah. Like, that's crazy how quickly it can turn. There's days that you can go out there and it can be 1 footers. And like, if you're out there for 4 hours and it turns, you're coming back in 5, 6 footers. Like, it's not for the faint of heart. And also you have to do your research.
Yes. Yep. I will say, like, once we stepped up and got that bigger boat, so much I mean, wind still affects us, but
Yeah.
not to the degree from when I
Yeah.
first started with John boats and stuff. It's just nuts.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
And
like the difference in like, cause mine's a 20 foot, yours is a 25. Like you can go out in 3 4 footers and just that extra bit of boat will help calm the boat hitting waves. You
yes,
can crest the waves better than like I can. And it's just the
yes,
way it is.
yep. I
That's why
still
the
like
charters
when
are
we,
using 30-foot boats.
yep.
Yeah.
And when we launch in the morning and I feel that big gust of wind hit me when I open the truck door, I look next to me and there's a guy launching a mud boat. I'm like, you're out of your mind, bro. You have no
Yeah.
idea the rodeo you're going to find
You're
at
coming
the end of
back
the
here
creek.
in the half hour.
Yep. So,
It's pretty crazy how it's cool how much business you get and how many people want to come here and just target divers. Like how
yep.
would you say that your split is from like boat blind hunts to layout hunts?
So I had always offered layout hunts. So this is my 5th year. And when I first started out, because I really enjoy layout hunting, it's my favorite way to gun diver.
Same.
So I
Yep.
did probably 50% my first season was layout hunts. And then I brought on my first captain. And I'll explain that a little bit why I did that. And they weren't fond of layouts. It was a lot of work for them. They didn't like it, so I never pushed it. Well, the new captain we have thoroughly enjoys it because he doesn't have to fight for spots. Like for whatever reason, the last couple of years, the crowds have gotten unbelievable around here.
Yeah.
Even during the week, and it just seems like every year there's more and more guide services coming out of the woodwork,
Right.
and a lot of them aren't even legal when you go and look into it. But it's just kind of comical. So it's putting a lot more strain on the bergs, and that's why we really started keying off on layouts again. I bet we're running 60 to 70% now layout boats just
Okay.
because the stress is not there. The only thing with layouts that we run into an issue I have to feel the customers out for is to make sure they're physically able to do it. Because
Right.
we get most of my clientele, I would say 60% of them are 50 plus years old.
Right.
So older guys stepping out, especially at Duckwater, that's a huge sided boat. To step out of
Right.
that down into a layout boat, especially when they're both moving,
Yeah.
that's you kind of got to feel out the guys on the phone. So we've been trying to screen them a little bit more because the first few we did, I didn't even ask them. I was like, "Oh, layout trip, great." I didn't think about it. I'm a young guy, right? We just
Right.
jump in it. And dude, the first time we had an issue, there was a guy from down south, like I think he was from Kentucky, and we drive. I think it was 12 miles at this point. We get out to where there's a huge raft of birds off the reef complex we were going to hunt. And I have those layout addictions ones. And we threw the
Yep.
two one-mans in, I guess like 2 foot shot, which isn't bad for a layout. That's actually what you want.
No, it's pretty good.
And I put the spray shields up and I pull out. I was like, all right, get in. And the guy looks at me, like climbs up on the back deck to step down. He goes, "You want me to get in that?" I go, "Yeah." It's pretty stable. It's jumping through like a kayak. And he's like, in the middle of this lake. I was like, "Yeah, that's what you booked." And he's like, "I'm not getting out of this boat," and walks back into the duck water. I'm like, What do you mean? Like we came all the way out here because you wanted the layout on." So we ended up polling them and then just putting the boat blind up like Pit Boss does, like anchoring out there in the middle of the lake. I mean, we shot a few, but that's when I really started screening people. I'm like, I'm not
Right.
doing this again. Like, guys out there, I'm like, this guy just watched me set 10 dozen decoys. Like, what did he expect as he's pitching decoy after decoy over with me? Like,
Yeah.
oh, it
Well,
was
and that's 10
comical.
dozen singles. That's not long lines.
Yeah, we do a mixture. So like layout spreads, I like making like a V with them. I'll
With
run
the
like
long
3 lines
lines.
on
Okay.
each,
Yep.
and then because I have two singles, I have a wide hole, and then I throw all singles out in front.
Right.
And dude, I put like a floating mojo or two out there, and like the whole hole will just be like buffleds and golden eyes,
Yeah.
and I'll put like 2 pods of golden eyes on the outside of the line. Dude, they love those like a buffy will cross every decoy to land next to one buffle head that's dead
It's
center of the hole.
insane.
Like, and oh, so that's kind of how we run our spreads. But Yeah, that guy literally was helping us set, and there's like 3 of them, and literally lets me get completely done, and then goes, "No, I'm not getting in the layout." But I'm like, "What? Like what? We've been doing this for 2 hours. What do you mean you don't want to get in?"
Now we got to completely switch the entire thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy to think, and I mean, it makes sense that there's older people that want the guide because, like you said, they're either stepping out of it or they've just gotten to the point in their life where they're like, I hunt 3 to 4 times a year. I don't want to pay for boat storage, maintenance, fuel. I got these old decoys. I'm gonna need new ones. Blah blah blah.
Yep.
When they can spend $1,000, go on a few trips, and they don't have to touch anything.
Yep. Well, that's the thing. So, like, a lot of them like bringing their grandkids out. It's a way for them to connect.
Yep.
And I know. I mean, I don't know about you, but I get done hunting at the end of the day. That cold takes out of me. I'm tired, right? Especially once I get home and put everything up.
Yeah.
And for them, they get done. They're tired just like me, but they don't have 4 more hours worth of work to do,
Right,
putting everything up and get ready. So it's way easier for them.
Yeah, they step off the boat and they just go get breakfast and then they're done.
Yep. And they're like, "Oh, thanks. See you next time." I'm like,
Yeah.
"Okay."
So, time to get ready for tomorrow.
Yep. I gotta hit the road and find the next one,
Yeah. So. And you mentioned that you now have captains. When did the like business side of it start to independently run itself to where you could kind of take a step back?
So that's kind of like a twofold question. So 2018, I started guiding, and that fall of 18, so this is one of the hardest points in my life. So fall of 2018, I told you I didn't book my first duck hunt until like a couple days before the second split opener.
Right.
At the same time, I was still working full time at Verizon as a sales rep. Okay. So I had limited days, and I switched my schedule to where I would come in at 1 and I'd be there till 9:30 at night closing, and then I have to go guide the next morning.
Right.
Well, in the midst of all that, in October, my dad started having real bad health issues.
Okay.
And he owned a label company where he made like customized labels for machinery within plants, like that they would sell, right? And he got to the point with his medical side that he couldn't still do it with all of his doctor's appointments, and they were putting him on all kinds of medication. He was just having a really bad time.
Yeah.
So I talked to him, and I ended up, him and I ended up striking a deal where I would buy it out over X number of years so that he could still have some income, right?
Right.
And so keep in mind, so I bought that October of 18, right before duck season. I didn't know anything about labels. Okay. I thought you just peeled and stick. Okay. There's so much more to labels. So there I am, 2018, full time at Verizon. All of a sudden now I'm got all his customers. Enough. Jesus Christ. I got his customers calling me at work, and I'm trying to figure out what they're even talking about because I just see the barcodes, right?
Yeah.
That they're referencing. I'm like, oh my God, what am I doing? And all of a sudden, people start calling for ducks. So I was like maxed out. So like my normal day in 2018 was I would go to work around 1. I would get home at 9. I would be up till 12:30, 1 o'clock in the morning processing all the orders that came in while I was at work.
Yeah.
And then I'd go to sleep, and I can't park the boat at my house, so I end up having the boat in storage. So I get up at 3 to be able to grab the boat by 3:30, 3:45 to meet the clients.
Yeah.
And then I do the whole thing again. So I was only sleeping like 3 hours a day, and it was killing me. Okay.
Of course. Yeah.
So fast forward to January, I get through it. And I told Meg, I was like, I can't do this anymore. Like, that about killed me. Like, that's why I got these willow peaks. Like, my hair was falling out. I wasn't eating good. And I mean, she was great through the whole thing because, like, I would come home and she was trying to take phone calls and schedule for, like, the guide service. Right. And I'd come home at 9 o'clock and she'd have dinner there for me. So I eat something real quick and then right into the office to go process the label orders. But it was just a lot, right?
Yeah.
And then it got to the point that, so that would be 2019 spring. I was like, I got to figure out something because the label business took off and now I got the charter taken off. I still got Verizon. I'm like, I'm only one guy. Right. So I started looking around and I was like, okay, I got to be at Verizon until August when I'm vested. so that I could leave and not lose out on all my retirement they gave me. And I'm like, okay, so I can make it till then, but that still doesn't fix the issue of me guiding, because the issue I was running into with guiding was I didn't have cell service where I was going.
Right.
So if I'm guiding during the week, my label customers can get a hold of me. And you don't just go to voicemail when a big client calls you. That's just not a thing you do, right?
Yeah.
So I was like, what do I do? So I started talking around. I found a guy to start running. He ran with us for 2 years. We had some severe growing pains because people liked hunting with me and the way I did things. You know, probably 30% didn't want to make the switch over to let the next guy run, which is understandable.
Yeah.
Me and him parted ways, and then I brought the guy that's running now, Eli, on. Absolutely fabulous. He runs the boat slower, just like I do. Because I mean, keep in mind we have older clientele. They don't want to go across the lake at 50 miles an hour. You know.
Yeah.
And it's once I got the people side figured out, like where they were reliable, they were showing up on time, showed them how to scout, showed them how to do things the way I wanted it ran. And then we still periodically spot check and call the customers, make sure they're happy.
Yeah.
Everything went way smoother. It took me 3 years before I got it dialed in to where I could not be on the boat, but it still ran the way I wanted it.
Right.
That was the hardest thing. That was a nightmare doing that. People are the hardest thing to control because it's just not you doing it. It's easier if I do it, but you know, you're not going to get anywhere if you're doing everything. You're not going to grow. So
right.
Once I got that done, I got the people in place. By then, by year 3, when Eli started doing it, I had the customers kind of navigated over to where this is the way we do things. I got them like accustomed to it. And that freed me up so much more. So, and then I started another company this year, like a real idiot. But so now I'm doing the same thing again. But yeah, that's how I did it. So I just slowly moved them over and spot checked to make sure they were doing it, because in guiding, like if you're not having repeats, you're sunk. Like you gotta be running 50-60% tile repeats because you have so many days to fill. It's all of a sudden you go in the next year, well, I only gotta sell 20 because I gotta find 20 new clients.
Right.
So much easier than finding 60, you know.
Right.
So
yeah, it's a repeat business, definitely. And you know, as you're growing, you're going to also be reaching new customers, and it just gives you like this, it gives you a big customer base that you can pull from when you need it.
yes.
But you also don't want a lot of turnover, because then that means you're doing something wrong.
Correct. And then, you know, if you have the turnover, they're going to go to one of the other guys, and you're probably never going to see them again, you know.
Yeah.
So kind of what set us different was we offer a couple different packages. So we offer boat blinds and layouts. We run brand new spreads every single year. And we, after the first year, I guess is even considered that, we were full-time guides, which means we were on the lake every single day of season, and we were scouting every single day. So our success compared to the average Joe Blow around here just kept going because we were out there so much more. We were walking birds every single day. And that speaks for itself. Like when you start having customers get off the boat and before they leave the parking lot, they already wrote you a check for a deposit. That's you're doing something right where they have that much fun, you know. So yeah, that's kind of how we did it.
Yeah, and it shows, because you guys now have the ability to kind of separate yourselves and travel.
Yes.
And I think that that's the coolest thing, is being able to like build something that is stable enough that you can leave and you can still work if you need to from the road, but you get to experience all these things that like the normal people don't get to see. And like obviously there's a lot of work that goes on in the background to get to that point. But like you've been to the Dakotas, you've been to Idaho, you've been to Louisiana to do bow fishing, like Michigan for old squaws. Like talk about some of those experiences that you've had.
Oh, dude. So this really just came in the last couple of years where I've actually been able to get time off to go, because I got everything set up the way I wanted, and I really only need cellular service now. So I still get phone calls every day, but you got to keep in mind we're going to a different time zone. So by the time I'm done hunting, it's the afternoon. That's when everybody starts calling me anyway. So it's perfect, you know.
Yeah.
So Megan likes to hunt as well. Okay, I know you know us, but I'm sure people don't. So that's actually how we met. I met her on one of the duck hunting pages, being just a smart ass commenting back on one of her things. She thought I was a dick, messaged me, called me out about it, and then she just never left, and we were a thing, right? So that's 8 or 9 years ago. And I don't know why she would leave Idaho, but she did. She came out here, and we started hunting, right? And that's all we knew, hunting and fishing. And so we had like this goal. I had this goal forever that I wanted to be able to travel, and Megan loves traveling. So I'm like, well, I don't want to just go and stare at water parks and stuff. I'm like, well, we're going to travel and shoot ducks. And she was all for it. Well, I finally got to the point where I could go. And then I'm like, well, where do I go? Like, I mean, I have read all these wildlife magazines, like Wildfowl. Like, that's all I read as a kid, DU and Wildfowl. I read all these articles from all these guys around the country. I'm like, dude, I want to go experience that. Like the Salt Lake in Utah. Oh my God, the place is amazing.
Yeah.
Like all these different places. So we literally just started in the last couple of years. I go on and I read the forums on Facebook where locals were talking about, oh, great season, all this. And I look back in years' history and seeing when guys were posting they were really successful. So then I started dropping pins on Honest just by bigger towns in these different areas where everybody said they live. When I clicked on their profile, I literally made my course all throughout the United States. And I had times like when I dropped these pins of windows to be there historically when they were good. That's how I started.
Yeah.
So it started with Michigan with longtails. I figured out, because those guys are very hush hush about it. That was a hard one to crack. So we figured that one out. Went up there. We had some great hunts up there. We hunted Lake Michigan and Lake St. Clair doing it. I'm a lot bigger fan of Lake Michigan than I am St. Clair, but it's just a lot less people out there. So we did that one. Then we went to last year. We decided, because I had nothing else to do, North Dakota's early geese open up in August, and you're allowed 15. I'm like, oh, sign me up. Like,
why not? Yeah.
North Dakota, right? So I'm like, and I never really field hunted. So I literally threw the decoys in the truck, and I made it to Minnesota until it dawned on me that I'm like, wait a second. It's all private. Like, if I don't get somebody to let me on their farm, like in Ohio, it's a nightmare. I'm like, I'm not going to be able to hunt. That's when it dawned on me. It was like Minnesota. I got all the way there. I'm like, how am I going to do this? Like, Ohio doesn't let people hunt. I'm like, what am I going to do? So literally picked the town, and I had a camper. So I backed the camper in. I'm like, well, I'm going to figure it out. And I literally used Onyx and Google Maps and like, where's the biggest water I could find that looked like home? Drove there and just started glassing for geese. I'm like, dude, they got to be here. And that's what I found. I just did the same thing here, but it was kind of funny. So once I started getting on ground and stuff, there's like, we're in smaller towns and everybody knows everybody. So if you're a new guy at a bar, everybody's gonna be like, oh, what are you doing? They're like the nicest people, right?
Right.
All these locals are like, oh, you don't want to go. They're like, oh, where do you hunt? And I told them whatever town I was hunting around. They're like, oh, you don't want to go over there. There's no geese over there. You want to go over here. Well, they've been hunting for 30 years, so they wouldn't even check these places anymore because they just decided it was bad. They've had bad hunts there. Well, here I am. I have no idea. It's all new to me, so I scouted everywhere. And I'm like, no, there's definitely geese there. Like, I got a whole truck bed full. And they're like, oh, it's horrible hunting over there. And then once they figured out, like, we knew what we were doing, dude, these people are the nicest people. So we go like the Pizzeria or somewhere. The amount of landowners I met at laundromats, unbelievable. So I'm in there washing my hunting clothes, and they strike up a conversation. Oh, what are you doing with all that camo? Oh, we're shooting geese. Really? My nephew owns a farm down the road. There was about 500,000 on it last night. You should go talk to him. Really? I said, I don't have anywhere to hunt tomorrow. Oh, I'll call him for you. 9 o'clock at night. They're like, yeah, here you go. Go shoot them out there. And it's just not like that around here. So I found a lot of people out there. But but yeah, so that's how I started doing that one. And then, like I said, we just started dropping pins everywhere. So, like I said, Meg's from Idaho, so she wanted to see her family last year. So I'm like, okay, well, I don't know anything about hunting Idaho, but I'm sure there's ducks there.
Right.
Literally went out, stayed next to her parents, and started doing the same thing. And then I discovered the Snake River out there. Dude, how much different that is compared to Ohio. A big spread on the Snake is like 2 dozen decoys. Okay. It's just night and day. And we would go weeks without seeing a soul. Like, not even another boat.
Right.
You'd be like the only one launched in the boat besides like some fisherman. He's like, oh, you guys are out of your mind going out there. It's cold. Well, you're going fishing. Like, how am I out of my mind?
Yeah, your hands are going to get wet, buddy.
Yeah. So that's just kind of what we did. So every year now, we just keep dropping pins on places we've read about, and then I read up on them, and away we go. So like this year, we're not going to the Dakotas until the spring, so we're gonna go Idaho for fall, and then once we get back, like an idiot, I decided, oh, I'm gonna get into snow goose hunting. So I started researching it. I started buying decoys because I'm obsessed with these white geese. Because I don't know why. Something about
it's because we don't have them here.
Yeah, we don't have them here. I didn't grow up chasing them. I'm like, there's no limits, and you can hunt them for 8 months out of the year, 9 months out of the year. I'm like, oh,
right.
Sign me up.
Like pigeon hunting.
I started doing all this research. I'm like, dude, I'm going. I'm like, I'm going to start in the Dakotas where I know landowners, and I'm just going to go for it. So we literally get back in February, and middle of March, I'm leaving, and I'm going to come back when I run out of geese, and they all flew past me. And that's just what we're going to do. So.
Yeah. And it's so cool that you have that ability to be able to just work wherever. And then when you want to hunt, you hunt.
Yeah.
But you get those experiences, that you wouldn't get here.
Yeah.
It's just way different.
The biggest thing. Like I grew up hunting big water here. I grew up layout hunting. And to see how I like the history behind things. So to see how people in different parts of the country hunt, it just blows my mind. Like, we would not set a field rig in North Dakota, anything like we would set in Ohio to kill the same geese. It's just unbelievable. Like, one of the things I learned, so they cut their wheat where it's about 4-inch tall stubble.
Okay? Right.
You can't hide in that. Like,
no.
It's not like Ohio where it's 6-8 inches tall. You can hide a layout. So I didn't know what to do. First couple hunts were horrible. And I'm like, well, what else am I going to, like, how am I going to kill these geese? Dude, I looked around at what was around, and there was sagebrush everywhere. I literally grabbed sagebrush, loaded my blind up with it, threw it in the middle of the decoys like I would, like, if I had it on wheat. I'm like, well, we're just going to try. Dude, they had no care. They were so used to sagebrush, like, patches in the middle of the fields. Dude, they land like 5 feet away. And, like, that's just, like, being out there and experimenting, like, just learning.
Yeah, it's matching the hatch.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I got like an obsessive personality, so like I'm going to go until I figure it out.
Yeah.
And if it makes it challenging, like snow geese or like figuring out a new area, it's like, now I got something to work on and focus on, and away I go.
It's like a competition with yourself to figure it out.
Yes.
I mean, we all are a little competitive as it is, and then it's like you start trying to do something different in a different place, and it's like it all comes right back around. You're like, I need to figure this out. I mean, we do kind of the same thing when we go up to Houghton Lake in Michigan for layout hunting. Like, it's a smaller lake, and like it's trying to figure out these early birds as opposed to when they get down here. And it's like, I don't travel as far as you do, but I understand the thought process behind it, where it's like, I don't want to leave here until I figure out why these 5,000 birds aren't working in here.
Yes.
Yeah.
Dude, it gets addicting. It's like, And then you're doing something like you read about as a kid. You're like, oh my God, I read about this river, or I read about that pothole region. Like, I want to go see it. So then you're there, you're driving down these dirt roads, and it's kind of like surreal because you're reading everything all these authors have talked about.
Right.
And I like doing the self-guiding aspect. I mean, I waterfowl guide as a living, so it's kind of like, I'm going to figure this out. Like, they're not better than me. Like, I can do this. And dude, there's some humbling moments that came those first
Oh
couple days
yeah.
in those wheat fields. It's like, wow, that did not work, you know? So,
But that's the fun part of it too, is like once you figure it out and then you go home at night and
yes.
you're like, I did it. That was
Yep.
all me. Nobody helped me. I didn't have to pay anybody to help me. And it's like, it's just that aspect of it that keeps you going.
Exactly. Dude, I can tell you what though, the people you meet along the road out there that like doing the same thing we do, hunting and fishing, dude, they are some of the nicest people. Like now I got contacts all over the country and they're calling me, dude, we're on them. You need to get here. Like it's just not like that around. Everybody's so
No.
like at each other. And then once you get out and you start traveling, dude, these guys, they just want to have beer at the end of the night. They want to go shoot a few birds and have a good time. It's not, I guess the stress level's not the same as around here where there's like 5 places in Ohio to hunt, you
Right.
know? So,
Yeah, it's tough because, we have such like a concentrated area because
yes,
because it's the lake. I mean, like the lake is kind of our like center in Ohio, where
yes,
like if you're further you are away from the lake, generally the less birds are there. The hunting is a little worse the further you get from the lake.
yes,
But when you're in a giant flyway, like the Mississippi Flyway, like that is helpful because there's just more, their potholes and stuff is like what they're attracted to. And there's potholes
yes,
everywhere. There's rivers everywhere. There's a ton of stuff. And it's like, it just makes it so much easier to pattern birds in an area like that where there are smaller potholes. And like you start
yes,
to pick up on those things as you're getting the experience of traveling. And like you said, it just helps with the stress because you're not shooting at the same birds every day. If we have a
yes,
1,000 geese here on the lake, generally 600 of them are getting shot at every day.
yes.
Where you're in the Dakotas or you're on the Snake River and like
Yep.
there's 500 mallards, maybe 100 of them get shot at over a week period.
Right. Well, what's different is we, with the Great Lakes, in my opinion, we stall out the migration. So a lot of birds come down, they hit the
Yes.
lake, and they sit, right? Because if you look on a map, the next place they're going to go is the Ohio River, and they're only going to
Right.
go there if they freeze up, right? I mean,
Yep.
besides the teal and stuff, but the big birds aren't going to leave.
Right.
Well, when you go to the Dakotas or Idaho or anywhere, you get off these Great Lakes, there's nothing to hold them.
Right.
So you get a front every week. Every week there's new birds coming through. So you got 5 to 7 days to shoot these birds,
Yep.
and they're gone. They're
Yep.
they're literally gone with the wind, and you got the next batch that haven't seen you hunt in the same field. They haven't seen you,
Yep.
and as that's happening, let's just take the North Dakota. You got 50,000 potholes, literally,
Right.
and they build these dirt roads right through the middle of them, which just cracks me up. They don't go around ponds; they just go right through the middle of them, and you're sitting there, you're like, dude, how am I going to find you? There's so much water. Well, every week, 25% get froze. Then the next 25, and it just starts
Right.
congregating these birds to where it's like, well, they got 8 choices to be at, and so you don't really hunt water when you get there. I learned that from the locals. I brought floaters out there, and you would have thought I just disrespected their family and spit in their face that I stuck up in this pothole. And from Ohio, that's all we do. We
Right.
shoot water.
Yep.
Well, I found out really quickly when I walked out to grab the first decoy. I went to my chest wager pocket and mud why they don't hunt these potholes. And I got a nice little stern talking to from the neighbor hunter because he was like, "You shoot them on water, they leave. They're gonna leave the area." He goes,
Got it.
"You shoot them in a field, they're gonna go to my field, and we're all gonna shoot them again." And
Yep.
the center point's still there. We're just chasing them in a circle.
Yep.
I was like, ah. He's like, so you guys come in here and just shooting them on water. Yeah, you get one good shoot, but you just mess us all up. And I was like,
Right.
got it. And then once I sank up to my chest pocket and mud, I was like, yep, never doing this again. So just field decoys went in the trailer. So, yeah.
Now, I know that like you said that you've hunted the Dakotas and Idaho. Is there any other states that you're going to try and target this year?
So we're kicking around right now. We're just going to Idaho for duck season only. We might touch Montana. Montana holds a lot of birds. If Idaho's a little stale, see, because they come down from the north, obviously. So
Right.
Montana holds them. Montana is great. Problem with Montana is if you're there at the wrong time, it's like -80. Even though the rivers are open, it's ice cold, and you can't live in a camper in that, right?
Yeah.
So you kind of have to play your cards. But if it's like 80 degrees, like in Idaho, and they're all sitting there, your boy's gonna figure out a way to go shoot a couple of them. And then like we're gonna do the Dakotas. We're still in talks if we want to try going farther south for snows, being my first season. I'm just leery because there's so much pressure down there.
Right.
Just how hard it's gonna be, and I don't feel like paying for ground to get on them. It's really just me and Meg, so I'm not gonna go and outbid an outfitter that's running 20 guys,
Right.
So that's where
that'd be like Kansas and Arkansas. You're talking.
Yeah, Missouri and Arkansas primarily. See, they hold there better, and then they call the Dakotas flyover states unless there's like a big snowstorm because they don't hold in the Dakotas. So you got a very short window to shoot them, but that's at the same time you don't necessarily have to chase speeds as much because they're here for so short windows.
Yeah,
you can almost set like bigger spreads and just hunt them day after day after day because new birds are coming every single day. So it's kind of one of those things. If you only have one or two people, is it worth picking up everything and moving every day? Or is it better to go up there, just set and hunt, take it easy, and
Yeah.
So if I had a group of guys, we'd be starting Arkansas on the whole way, like we're going. But yeah, finding people that have the time off like I do is hard. So
yeah, that's definitely going to be a difficult thing to find people that have that same schedule that you have to be able to do that. Yeah.
And a lot of people don't want to hunt every single day.
Right.
I would rather die than not hunt every single day. So that's just how I built my life. So
that's the drive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're all like I've hunted Long Island, Michigan, Ohio, obviously. I've hunted North Dakota, Missouri, and Utah and Idaho. Those are my 4. Those are where I've been, but I'm trying to get to Kansas, South Dakota. But South Dakota is weird because you have to draw it. Like you can't just walk to South Dakota and go hunting unless it's spring season. So I put in for that one the last 2 years, and of course I'm not very successful. It's like me putting in for the draws around here. Yeah. And then I want to get down to Texas. I'm hoping to do Texas next year because I want to do teal and dove in September down there because through the amount of doves they have down there is I've never shot a white wing either. So
yeah, that'd be super cool.
Yeah.
Would you try and do sandhills down there too?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. So you can shoot sandhills in the Dakotas, but you have to buy a permit for them.
Right. Yep.
And those little things are weird. So we saw them out there when we were hunting. They don't like being around decoy spreads. It's not like you go and throw 3 like decoys to the side and then shoot your sandhills or whatever. It's like you're gonna shoot sandhills or you're gonna shoot geese. There is no I mean, you might get a flyby or whatever. That was the weirdest concept because you'll see them in fields together, but they ain't gonna the geese come in after the sandhills are there. They don't like mixing.
Got it.
Like it was
that makes sense.
Yeah, and those birds, they're so weird looking too. I want to drop one. That not swan. I want to get swan. So Utah draw swans, North Dakota draw swans. I
think
want
North
to get
Carolina
one.
does as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
So those are on my list for the next couple of years to get. Once again, it's all draws, and that's the kicker is you gotta draw one of these. So
it's like a Colorado elk hunt or something. Like you got to put in and get your points and get your time, and I can see how that would.
So
it'd be a little disheartening after doing 5 draws in a row for 5 years and being like, oh well, why would I try and keep doing this if I haven't gotten it yet?
Yeah, and they're not cheap either. So like South Dakota, I mean, you're paying just to put in for because they only let a non-resident have I think it's 7 days at one time there. Okay. So like for you to put in, you have to pay to go into the draw. I want to say it's around $150, and then if you actually draw, you then have to pay an additional amount to buy your licenses and everything else.
Right. Yep.
Which are not cheap. And then I'm just like, man, they're getting you every which way you come to come hunt here. So, I mean, it's good for the locals and everything because then you don't get swarmed by 10,000 people.
Yeah.
So I get it. But as an outsider, it's like, damn, man, I spent $300. I haven't got to shoot anything yet.
And if you don't in a week, then it's like, well, that was your chance.
Yep. And I know if I drew it, they could sign a week and it'd be 80 degrees and sunshine every day. I'd be like, wow, this is horrible. So
yeah, I mean, one of these days you'll get it.
Oh, I'll get there. It's still young, man. Like I said, we just started traveling. So I started. We did our first Idaho trip in January of 2020, right through COVID. That was fun because getting lodging, that was a nightmare. And then last year we went full year gone, and then this year we're lucky enough to be able to do it again. But like I said, that like each year we're just dropping pens and we're just bouncing around till we figure out these are the areas we really like, So
right.
It's nice. So like I'm hoping so next year we're going to Texas and Kansas. I know that during season. That's really gonna mess up my early geese. I'm kind of frustrated about that, but seasons overlap and you gotta do certain things. So
exactly, yep.
But I'm just fortunate that we're able to keep taking time off like that, and luckily Megan enjoys the same things I do, so I don't get roped into going Disneyland or something. That's waste,
she would much rather run one of your 5 dogs every day and then and hunt every day. Like it's all the stars have aligned for you. Definitely.
Oh, yeah. Definitely. Yep. So took a lot of hard work to get here, but it's been worth it. So
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, to end off the podcast, I always ask the guest this one question. And if you could pick up another hobby, something you've always wanted to get into, what would it be?
Am I doing it right now or brand new?
Brand new.
That's a good one. Brand new hobby to get into. Dude, I'd probably take up like falconry.
Oh, that's a good one.
Like taking falcons out, like waterfowl, like training them and stuff. Like I think that'd be so cool.
I've seen a lot of videos on people that like train them, or like people that, because I think in certain places you can literally just go out and if you capture a falcon, you can keep it.
Yeah.
So like, dude, that would be insane.
Seasons for them, that would be so cool out there.
That would be wild.
Yep. I have no idea
really good one.
Falcon, but
yeah,
I'm gonna figure it out.
I mean, I feel like I've watched the videos on like people that are, because there's like a few guys, and I think I heard one of them on a podcast talking about like how he got them to do it, and like, dude, they just go out on their own. Like they come back if you've trained them to come back, and if you haven't trained them, then they're just gone.
They're gone.
You gotta start over again.
Falcon. Yep.
Yeah. But you can just drive like in a truck and just like let them out the window.
Yeah.
That would be insane.
So cool.
Wow.
Nope.
That's impressive that's what you came up with.
You need to start making a video about it. Like, how am I going to do this? And like show the world this is how I train my falcon.
Oh my God. Can you imagine like somebody shows up at your house and you're just like, oh, you want to see my falcon? And they're like, oh, it just sits on that perch there. No cage, nothing. You're like, well, no, I trained it.
Yeah. Dude, I want the little leather thing, blinders on, where he's judging the whole time. I'm like, yeah, that's my falcon. Yep.
Oh,
he's judging right now. Don't worry about it. Yep.
That's a really good one. Wow.
Yep.
Well, man, it was a pleasure having you on. Anything you want to plug while you're on?
If you want, just drop a link to my charter down below. We offer fully guided waterfowl hunts, layout, and boat blind, and then we offer spring walleye fishing and summer perch fishing. So we try to keep it going year round.
Awesome. Yeah, that'll be linked in the description. Huckeye Charters, for anybody that's listening and doesn't have access to that, you can find them on Facebook, and you can get a hold of Matt and Megan on there.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, buddy. Well, it was a pleasure having you on, And anybody that's listening or watching, be sure to either give the podcast a 5-star if you're listening to it, give it a thumbs up if you're watching on YouTube, share it with your friends, and stay tuned for more episodes. Thanks, Matt.
Yep. Thanks, buddy.